Whenever you play a game like Doom or you encounter a website with a song playing in the background back in the day, you would think of General MIDI. I've grown up listening to a lot of MIDI music back then on my computer, which was a Dell Dimension L with an Intel Pentium 3 and had Windows ME for a brief while, before it was replaced with Windows XP Home Edition. You can pretty much say that I started out using the Microsoft GS Wavetable synth that it provided, and then several years later would discover sound fonts, allowing a variety of ways to listen to your favorite MIDIs. Now, some may wonder, what is a general MIDI? It is a musical standard consisting of data containing notes and other information that is being played using a synthesizer of choice. This standard has been around as early as 1991 by both the American MIDI Manufacturers Association and the Japan MIDI Standards Committee. MIDI music served multiple purposes, like composing music with a sequencer, obviously, and showing it off to your friends and family, while selling tons of cassettes and CDs. At least that's how bands like Nine Inch Nails did their first album, Pretty Hate Machine, using a Macintosh Plus and multiple synthesizers. But back in the 90s, General MIDI was most commonly used for computer games, and if you were lucky enough to even have a sound card in the first place, you would have FM synthesis, which sounded like this. Without going too much into detail and to keep it a bit short, FM synth have been around since the 1960s, with Yamaha expanding it to make their first commercialized synthesizer called the Yamaha GS-1 in 1980. Yamaha would also provide FM chips, such as the OPL2 and the OPL3, which were mostly popular with sound cards like the Adlib and the Sound Blaster. While some other Yamaha chips were used in other computer hardware at the time, like the PC98, using the Yamaha YM2203, also known as the OPN. Now, not only computers had Yamaha chips, but even arcade machines as well, and your mobile phones too, which interests me in some... Hello?
Extended warranty.
Stupid scammers. Anyway, if you have a good chunk of money back then, you could have also bought a Roland SC55 for a more richer music experience. In fact, that's my go-to route for background music aside from the Gravis Ultrasound, which uses patches as instruments instead of actual hardware doing most of the work. Well, except unlike the Sound Blaster, the Gravis Ultrasound uses less CPU overhead, though I do not have access to an actual sound canvas, so I am stuck using sound fonts made by Trevor 402 or Triaxis, at least until I buy my own in the future. Those Roland sound modules were commonly used by many music composers, especially for games from the 90s. Like Bobby Prince, for instance, made the Doom soundtrack using the SC55, whereas Lee Jackson used the SC88 for Duke Nukem 3D's soundtrack. Now, I'm sure some might remember this song from the past several videos on my YouTube channel, used for my outro. Now, that's from a commonly used Doom 2 deathmatch WAD named Dwango 5, rendered on the Gravis Ultrasound. Like, this is usually the best part about General MIDI. You have all these MIDI files and a variety of sound fonts to choose from. Like, when you get bored of the Roland sound, you can even throw in a sound font that mimics the NES or even a Sound Blaster AW32. At times you can even remap the instruments to fit some sound fonts that don't cover all the instruments, or even use multiple of them by using Synth font. At the time of making this video, I used CoolSoft Virtual MIDI Synth that has hundreds of instrument sound fonts loaded in, which is basically a 5GB SC55 sound font with some tweaks by Trevor0402. Now, for those who do not know, a sound font is a file that contains sample-based instruments that has been around since the release of the Sound Blaster AW32. Now, the only limits you had at the time was that it was commonly used for Windows, so you wouldn't have much luck getting it to work on a pure DOS environment. Now, not only that, but you are also limited on how much RAM your sound card had. So if you had an 8MB sound font and you only had 4MB of RAM, you are pretty much out of luck for this one. But as technology advanced long enough to have PCI sound cards and later integrated sound chips on motherboards, Microsoft began to provide their own wavetable licensed by Roland, which is named the Microsoft GS Wavetable Synth. It exists as early as Windows 98, but it was most common in Windows NT based operating systems like Windows 2000 and Windows XP. Now, Roland and Yamaha would also release their own soft synthesizers, like the Virtual Sound Canvas and the SYXG50. Now, those soft synthesizers did exist prior to the move from ISA sound cards, and it can be somewhat useful for those who want a decent MIDI experience outside of the FM synth. Also, shout out to Windgroove, another soft synthesizer. Now, when it comes to the Roland SC55, the accuracy between soft synthesizers and the sound fonts versus the real deal has been debated for years, with many trying to develop their own sound fonts trying to mimic the SC55 as accurate as possible. And with the development of MUSC, it's only a matter of time before we wouldn't need a sound font mimicking the experience when you can just emulate it. But anyways, enough chatter about sound modules. Another thing I would like to bring up is how at times some people, or at least a few I know, look at MIDIs as boring and samey. And that is because many were so used to the Microsoft Wavetable Synth and didn't bother trying out sound fonts. Normally, I am mostly fond of the Roland sound, so I usually don't understand it. But at the same time, it all boils down to preference. Like, I love the soundtrack for Descent on the SC55, but some love it even more on a Yamaha sound module, and the preference is what makes it special to me. While MIDI music has many ways to be enjoyed, tracker module music has more creativity due to its sample-based nature, but more on that on another time. There is plenty of MIDI music that you can explore on the internet these days, and even the Doom community continues to compose MIDIs for their projects. Like, I would find some useful for my videos and live streams on the Doom World forums under the Creative Works category. Because honestly, using non-copyrighted music found on YouTube just doesn't appeal for me for some reason. If it weren't for the risk of getting my videos blocked in several countries, which affects the viewership, I would be blasting a lot of the music I have on Spotify and some other places. But at least I have MIDIs and tracker music to use as background for the time being. Now, not all MIDIs are safe from copyright. I remember many years ago I've uploaded a Blood Alpha soundtrack on the Arachno sound font, which also had a few extra MIDIs from the music folder, which to my surprise YouTube detected a copyright song from Depeche Mode, which is titled Walking in My Shoes. Now, it also doesn't help that there's also MIDI renditions of copyrighted songs overall, and it's usually hard to avoid finding those, especially in Doom WADs. Dwango WADs are usually an example of this. Like in Dwango5.wad, Map02, the map features a MIDI rendition of Head Like a Hole by 9 Inch Nails. Now, not all detected songs will be blocked in several countries. In fact, some of the songs that were detected had no impact at all. Now, I will also say, use it at your own risk, I guess. I still recommend using the free-to-use MIDIs if possible. Anyways, that about wraps up this video. What is your favorite way of playing MIDI music? And as always, peace out. Oh, you got to be fucked. Bye.